Puzzles are all around us. I see them everywhere, which is why I started making them. I have thousands of ideas for puzzles that I can make for you to solve. And in my other life, I perform puzzles that I hope you won't solve.
Welcome, David. Welcome to Recon.
Hey, thanks.
Really glad to have you. So let's dive in, get a little bit personal. You are a bit of an enigma. You have professionally blended magic and puzzles, and your career has absolutely nothing to do with escape rooms, at least on surface value. How did all that happen?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. It's so fun to be talking to all of you and be talking with you, David. I think that those three worlds, magic, puzzles, and escape rooms, we're all playing in the same sandbox, right? I, in my career, argue that all magic tricks are puzzles. And I think you could say the same thing about escape rooms. They're all puzzles. We are challenging your brain. We're challenging your creativity to see if you can figure out the solution of what's going on. And perhaps the only real difference is with a magic trick, you hope your audience doesn't figure out the solution.
Really find, as I've been reading your book, as I have watched your videos, have this interesting background, and I kept wondering, which came first, the magic or the puzzles for you personally?
Most magicians start when they're little kids. Everyone cites that they got a magic set when they were 7 years old, and I saw my first magician when I was 7 years old at a pumpkin patch in upstate New York. I'm from Rochester, New York. The puzzle thing was mostly playing Scrabble with my mother, who's a history professor. We've always had this bond over word games and language. So there were parallel hobbies, but I was performing magic in a more conventional way until rather late in my career, when I realized the light bulb turned on and I realized I can cross-pollinate these two things, these two passions I know so well. I can put them together and synthesize something new. So the magic puzzle hybrid was born that way. And I'm a big proponent of, if you want to come up with something new, take two things that you love, two things that you are an expert at, and put them together. So here we are.
And so that gave birth to the Enigmatist.
Well, the Enigmatist, which was my show in New York, that ran for a year, and I know a lot of you have seen it. David, you saw it. Thank you for coming. That's been the culmination of all of this. So I've been doing magic and puzzles for a long time, but I had never done a publicly ticketed magic show or magic puzzle show. I had been doing private parties and corporate performances. People say, be careful what you get good at. And I got good at doing a show for Delta Airlines or D.E. Shaw or, these corporate performances to pay for my mortgage. So, but I just felt like I need to interact with people. I need any person off the street to be able to come see what I'm doing. So it was tough. I had to hit pause on the business and do something creative. And when I started off in New York in January of 2019, God, my year's like, what is time anymore?
I mean, that feels like it was like 10 years ago now. So
yeah, January 2019, I had 16 shows planned, and it ran for a year. And I wrapped it around to January 2020, and then I was meant to bring it to Los Angeles to the Geffen Playhouse in May of 2020. That's been pushed a year. It'll now be May 2021.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really hope that people are able to see it in LA starting next year, because for me, we loved it. Lisa and I loved it, and we sent a ton of people to go and see it, and absolutely everyone came back blown away and wanting to compare notes and wanting to see what you did the same and what you did differently. And it was it's really quite the experience that you crafted there.
Magicians hate it when people see their magic shows more than once.
Yeah.
I don't mind. My whole approach to magic is one of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I say it's a puzzle. If you can figure out the puzzle, good for you. So I think what sets me apart in that regard is that I'm not pretending to have superpowers. So, which is an approach that most magicians take, which is totally fine. But I'm kind of like, I constructed this thing for you all to puzzle over, and if you can figure out, good for you. So actually, I love it when people come back.
We've only gone the once, but we found that in the escape room, particularly in the escape room Slack community, everyone who went kind of jumped into a channel, and they were all discussing like, okay,
oh my God, I got to read that.
Yeah, what happened? And people were really, really into this, and comparing what was similar and what was different between our experiences. And there were a couple of parts that people really got into trying to like
that is
figure
amazing.
out.
I mean, 19th century magicians did not have to deal with Slack channels breaking down their shows.
No, they also didn't have to deal with YouTube being able to slow down your video to half speed. You just were alluding to this notion of some magicians creating a character that portrays having superpowers.
Yes.
What are your thoughts, like philosophically? What are the reasons to do that or not to do that? What's your take on that?
Well, we're all doing that to an extent. A big part of my show is this vaudevillian mental gymnastics. That's one of the big takeaways of my show is what is the human brain capable of, right? So I'm both unlocking your potential and allowing you to solve puzzles, but then I'm also on stage doing some crazy brain exercises to just leave a little bit of a question mark of, is he really doing that? Is he really that smart? I think what makes some magic shows really effective is how performers can blur the lines between what is real and what is not. And you see that to great success with like David Blaine, right? David Blaine, he's really standing on that pole for a week or holding his breath for 16 minutes. He's demonstrating real feats. But then with some of his tricks, when he's using sleight of hand methods that you're not aware of, you think, well, is he really doing this? Is he really jamming that thing through his hand or not? Or is he using some sort of device? So blurring the lines is really an effective technique. I think Darren Brown does that incredibly with hypnosis. He's bringing people up on stage and really hypnotizing them. But when he uses other methods in TV production, again, the lines are blurred. I do that with things that I've really memorized and things that I can really calculate. So I demonstrate that skill in real time during my show. And then at other times, I'm using sleight of hand methods to enhance that ability. So I just make this big question mark of what's really happening and what's not.
So what you're doing is you're pulling together all of these different disciplines into a whole where it's very difficult for the person participating to tell the difference between where one discipline begins and ends and another one has taken over.
That's right. Yeah.
That's a lot like what goes into an escape room. So let's talk a little bit about one of the other disciplines that you have professionally pursued, which is crossword puzzle design.
Yeah.
How does one professionally break into that?
A lot of rejection letters. I started doing crosswords professionally about 20 years ago, mailing them into the New York Times. I had a friend who was doing it first, and I was inspired and jealous that my friend Kevin had puzzles in the New York Times. So he taught me what to do. And you still send them in. Actually, I think they finally upgraded to email, but it used to be just you snail mail your puzzle into the New York Times. I now have a little bit of a bat phone to the editors. If I come up with some crazy idea, will you accept this or not? but it's a lot of trial and error. Even just this past week, I put out on Twitter, I said, if who wants to test this puzzle that I'm writing? And I got all sorts of feedback from people, and I'm scrapping it and starting over. The crossword puzzle to me is really this exercise on creativity for constructors, and how 365 days a year, you open up that newspaper and there's a different trick. There's a different ploy, a different twist. And we as constructors have to come up with something new every single time. So it's a really cool exercise in pushing the envelope. And the best puzzles, my favorite puzzles, are the ones that mess with the parameters and the familiarity of the crossword puzzle, right? So one of my favorite ones ever, I didn't write this, it was like quote part 1, quote part 2, quote part 3, 4, and 5. And part 1 of the quote, the answer was British waiting line, which is a Q, right? Part 4 of the quote was drink with jam and bread, which is a T. So you're used to seeing quote part 1, 2, 3, 4 in the puzzle, and somebody messed with that constraint. So anyway, fun word for all of you. Cruciverbalist is the fancy word for crossword puzzle constructor. Cruci meaning cross, like crucifix, and verbal meaning word.
What makes a crossword puzzle accessible versus not accessible to the general public? Because there's a huge span and gap in difficulties.
Well, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the crossword, it starts easy on a Monday and gets progressively harder. Saturday is the most difficult. Sunday is like a Thursday plus. It's the bigger grade in the magazine. Everybody can do a Monday puzzle. And also, they've rolled out the mini puzzles for the last several years. If you've been doing those, it's a great gateway drug to the rest of it. And all of you can do the Monday puzzle if you've never done a crossword before. Will Shorts, who's the editor of the Times puzzle and is a mentor and a friend of mine, he says that a good puzzle makes the solver feel smart. And that is a mantra that I apply to everything I do. And we could talk about that in regard to the Enigmatist. Mm-hmm. But certainly with the crossword puzzle itself, you want to find that perfect point. It's that aha moment when the solver cracks the puzzle and two things happen simultaneously. They feel smart for having solved it and cracked the code, and at the same time, they are acknowledging the constructor for having come up with something clever to begin with. And that's that sweet spot. So you don't want to make a puzzle where people finish it and they're like, what just happened? I don't understand this. Or this doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. You want that applause from people. You want people to be like, oh, that was cool. I get it. You know? And if you're not going to get that moment, then I've thrown out a lot of puzzles that just don't add up in that way.
So when you go to apply that kind of logic to creating something like the Enigmatist, where you have an audience of diehard crossword puzzlers and magic fans and puzzlers in general, and people who have no idea about any of this and didn't really care about any of it before coming in to see your show, how do you approach puzzle design to make something that everyone in that audience will walk away appreciating?
Accessibility is the key term. Accessibility. At the end of the day, you want everyone to feel smart. You want to give them things that they can accomplish. And I have found personally that the best way to do this is a couple of different tracks. And this has just worked well for me. If you want a fun activity, take a look at the Enigmatist trailer, which was a little teaser for my show. There's 2 tracks there. I finish the trailer and I say, there's a hidden message in what you just saw. Hit pause and go back and look for it if you want. And then after the pause, it reveals the answer. And I won't say what it is, but I kind of spoon feed it to everybody. And I say, I hope you enjoyed that. And everybody should understand what just happened. So they'll feel smart if they if they went back and they found the hidden message, they'll feel smart. If they didn't want to do that, they'll understand in that moment what happened. But then I also say, and there's another puzzle hidden in the trailer, which is a little more difficult. And if you find that, there's a website with even more puzzles. Good luck. So I think that track really works. There's a deck of cards that I am putting out. It's right now on Kickstarter, and this is a sample card from it. And this is themed on my show, The Enigmatist. Knowledge is power at the top. Anyway, there's a couple of tracks in here. There's an easy puzzle that everybody can do, and then similarly, there's something harder. So, and if you find that, you can unlock many, many, many more steps. And I think that's a good approach.
One of the things that I noticed while doing particularly just the trailer puzzle is that one definitely makes you feel smart. Solving the harder one, to me, felt like it made you actually be smart. Whereas it wasn't just there for people, for anyone. You have to actually commit to do it. But I think that what you've accomplished there adds a lot of depth. It has enough there for someone who is casually interested in what you have to offer. They can get it done, they can feel good about it, and then they can go on with their lives. And they're going to forget that there was something that they had left on the table long after. For me, I saw that. I solved the first one. I was like, cool. All right, I want more. And then dove in, and it took me a while to get the trailer puzzle. But I also wasn't letting it go.
It didn't require any specific knowledge, which is important. So if you guys want to try it out, it's something that we all know and understand, and you might have to work it out a little bit, but it should be rewarding. I hope so.
For me, it was.
Yeah. And just to echo the New York Times crossword puzzle again, something that Will Shortz says, people often ask, is it okay to look stuff up, the answers? And he says, absolutely. And I agree, because at the end of the day, he wants you to finish the puzzle and understand what happened so that you can be like, oh, that was cool. I get it. And, and that's what I'm always going for. So I'm like accessible. You can tweet at me, DM me. I give you hints. Like, I want to get you to the next step of 4 puzzles that are online. I wanted to keep going.
That's really important to note, because I think sometimes when people are constructing puzzles, they get into their minds this notion that it must be hard because puzzles are supposed to be hard. And if not everybody solves it, then I, as the puzzle constructor, win. But I think puzzles are meant to be solved. And that what you're talking about really is getting to the heart of that.
Well, I would love to see the data on this, but I'm sure all of you have experienced in real time, practically, that when you give hints in an escape room, people come out of there happier. They want to get through it. They want to finish it. And the psychology of it, I'm sure, is fascinating. I think that most people throw out the window that you helped them through it. They are telling their friends, oh yeah, we got out of this room.
Yeah, and the owners who I've spoken to who really do keep good data on this all agree that the teams that win and get out are considerably more likely to return and pay more money to play another game.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. So
you make a lot of use of ciphers in your show, in The Enigmatist. And from watching the teaser video for your deck of cards, looks like there's going to be quite a few there as well. How do you approach using ciphers in a way that keeps people engaged and doesn't make them feel like they're overstaying their welcome?
Yeah, ciphers are scary. I think I understand your questioning. They seem like they can be over your head immediately. So the one that is the backbone of my show is the Baconian cipher or binary. Mm-hmm. And I take great pains in the show to be like, here's how it works, you know? And this is the letter K, and this is the letter M, and you don't have to use A and B or 1 and 0. You could use, and one of the funnier moments is you could use Key and Peele, and I show their faces, you know. So I'm really breaking it down in layman's terms. You can use any pair of symbols in a group of 5. But at the same time, David, I'm not then like quizzing the audience like, okay, so what's the letter V? I'm giving you that information, and I'm explaining historically that somebody used this cipher. And if you're able to get it, that's cool. But hopefully you have a base kind of understanding of what happened, and I just keep going with the story. So this is not meant to be a secret. The Baconian ciphers here on this bookshelf, they're I mean, it is a secret, but it's not part of the deeper second track that you need to solve. So those bookshelves are white. The white and gray, blue bookshelves alternate in Baconian cipher. But if you go to my website, it will explain that.
Very cool. So there are a finite amount of magical illusions that can be performed on stage at any, by any given magician. I have heard estimates range from 7 types to 12, but there aren't that many different types of tricks that magicians are performing. How do you go about taking that tool set and figuring out how to turn that into a show that is uniquely yours?
Yeah, I've seen those lists as well, breaking down magic into a certain number of effects. I don't know what the number is, but yeah, we're using the stuff from the turn of the last century. I always say you're putting a fresh coat of paint on the old stuff. That's what it is. It's a new way of connecting with people. It's whether you're taking advantage of technology because it's 2020 and you're using iPhones or so the trick that I finished the Enigmatist with is I'm building a crossword puzzle in real time on a big board, and there's a playing card hidden in the crossword puzzle. And if you think about it, that's really just pick a card, any card. I'm going to figure out what it is, and I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm going to reveal it, and that is a long, complicated 15-minute reveal as I make a crossword puzzle. Right? So it's a fresh coat of paint on the old stuff. And that's how you make it unique. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Every once in a while, someone comes up with a crazy new scientific principle, and it's a new magic trick altogether. But for the most part, it's mixing and matching the old things.
Throwing out a random question at you. While I was doing my research, I spent a whole bunch of time scrolling down your Instagram, and I found something that just really needed more context. Okay. You had a post from March of 2017. It's a tweet from William Shatner that says, "What up with you, puzzler dog?" ?
Yeah, you know what that is? William Shatner is a big fan of Blind Spot, which is NBC's show about Jamie Alexander is the actress who plays a woman that wakes up in Times Square. Her mind has been wiped and her body is covered with tattoos that are basically a treasure map and a plethora of secret codes that lead to things. So the show was created by Martin Garrow. He brought me on to help to consult on the puzzles for that show. I've since collaborated with Dave Shukan, who's puzzle consultant for the Enigmatist. The two of us make the puzzles for that show. And he watches it and he tweets about it. So occasionally I get a nice little shout out from my friend Bill Shatner. I've never met him.
That's definitely feels like a nerd achievement unlocked.
Yeah. I was thinking about your question about a finite number of magic tricks.
Yeah.
And whether there are a finite number of puzzles is also a question. Yes and no. I think there is always a different. I think there are unlimited puzzle types. But at the end of the day, when your solver unlocks something, you want it to be familiar at that point, right? I see nothing wrong with a bunch of steps, and once they get through, they realize, oh, this is Morse code, and we have a Morse code chart here, so we can look that up. But that familiarity is what contributes to the aha moment. You don't really want people to have to go out and learn a crazy new thing. So it's kind of like a combo answer, right? Mm-hmm. I think there's an unlimited way that you can express things and put different coats of paint on it. But at the end of the day, I think the familiarity is what makes things resonate with people.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You've given a few TED Talks over the years, and one of my favorite ones is from 2014, where you're really focused on misdirection and people's susceptibility to misdirection in life, not just on stage. This is a talk that resonates with me more and more, really every single year. Partially because I think misdirection is important in escape rooms, but also because misdirection has become incredibly important in life in general at this point. Talk to me a little bit about what misdirection means and how people are susceptible to it.
Well, magicians try to use misdirection for entertainment, as do escape room designers. So there's a contract with the audience that when you sit down to watch a show or you step inside the room, that it's for fun. That's not a contract we have in real life when we're getting misdirected by politicians. My favorite quote about misdirection is attributed to Tommy Wonder, the great Dutch magician. And he says that misdirection is the art of giving people something of greater interest to pay attention to, right? So bad misdirection, by contrast, would be if somebody were to, you're performing a magic show and you have a stagehand walk on stage with a tray full of pots and pans and drop them on the ground, and they make a huge din, and everybody looks over, and it breaks the action. It breaks what was happening on stage. Everybody knows that was intentional. But if you can fold misdirection into the arc of the story of what's already transpiring, then that is the most effective misdirection. So for a magician, the best misdirection, I'm probably telling you something I shouldn't, but I'm going to do it anyway. The best misdirection is the end of an existing trick, of the current trick. So if I've built up this whole thing where I show an empty silk and I make a dove appear out of it, and this bird is flapping its wings, that's the end of the trick. You're all watching that. You're not going to want to miss that. That's where the action is. That is the perfect time for me to reach for something else, right? It's the eye follows the action. Your brain follows the emotional action, the end of the trick, the end of the arc. And that's when I'm reaching for my next thing. So the art of giving people something of greater interest.
This leads perfectly into my next question, which is watching that YouTube video, watching that TED Talk. My favorite thing about it, and it's kind of a guilty pleasure, is, and I've gone back and reread it a few times, the comment section on that video. I find it endlessly entertaining when people accuse you of being a fraud, because they think that they figured out how you did something. Whether they did or didn't, I don't think it really matters. How do you, as someone who we talked about earlier, you don't proclaim to have any magic powers. How does it hit your ear, or in this case, your eye, when someone is saying that you're a fraud because it's not real magic?
Yeah, I haven't read that comment section in a while, but you're right. It is packed with a lot of fun stuff. You get people who are saying they hold TED to be sacred, and TED should be disseminating just facts. How dare this magician say that this is what's actually going on, right? Take a look. If you haven't seen it, I am supposedly influencing somebody throughout the course of the talk. But then you have other people who are saying, wait a minute, the very first words out of his mouth are, I'm a magician. Literally, that's what I say. And my friends, if I'm saying that, everything that follows, I can do whatever I want. It goes back to what I said before. When you blur the lines, it creates for great entertainment. There's one guy, I can't remember, it's in broken English. There's one really nice comment in there from Dongmin Lee. This is magic. He did not speech. He just play on the TED. How amazing. First, I think, awesome. How wonderful lecture. And I watched it twice. Then I think, this is a trick. I was just deceived by him. But now I think, that was just not lecture. It is magic. He was aimed to this situation too. This situation is TED. I love it. Ambiguity, guys. Like, go for...
I couldn't put it better myself.
Yeah, that's really great.
This all brings me to really, it's the thesis of quite a few things that you've put out, which is this notion that there is a universal human need to solve. Help me understand what that means.
Yeah, what was the first puzzle? I think you can make an argument that the caveman going to get his food knows that there's a saber-toothed tiger between the food and him, and how do I get around it? You know, I think having to deal with constraints and figure out a solution is, you know, it's inherent to who we are. I saw this quote the other day that puzzles are all about pain. And you're inflicting this pain, but you know ultimately that you're going to be able to get through it and release that pain, and you're going to feel accomplished. So that's an interesting take on things. At the end of the day, again, we like to feel smart. We like to feel accomplished. And puzzles are a great way to build up that potential energy. You know, when you break through it, you get this rush of kinetic, I feel smart, I did it, I got through it. And I think the best escape rooms, the best puzzles unlock that for everybody.
So I know you're a fairly avid escape room player. Or we have a mutual friend in common who I think Tammy McLeod is one of your regular teammates.
No one's better than Tammy at escape rooms. I'm like lucky to be on her team whenever that happens.
Tammy is a force of nature.
Yeah.
What have been some of your favorite rooms, and what made them special to you?
I really liked Lab Rat in Los Angeles. I really loved the immersive experience of the Nest in Los Angeles. Yeah. And I wonder, it wasn't an escape room, but there were little puzzly elements, and I'm fascinated to hear what all of you guys think about, you know, why that is needed. Why, even though this is ultimately a narrative exercise, do you give people little things to unlock and engage in? And they do it just the lightest, easiest way, but it keeps things moving. And I'm sure that you all find that when you do that, people are engaged and they move from one step to the next. So I thought that was a beautiful room. And they send you things ahead of time, and it was just great.
The Nest was phenomenal. We went to the first run of it, and the way that it works is it's a narrative. It's a story. It feels almost like a video game that uses light escape room puzzles as gates that just slow your progression. And you're carrying with you a cassette player that has, and you find cassettes all over the place. And there's a very good reason why they're there, and there's a very good reason why you're there. There are more cassettes than you have time in that experience. And the cassettes are what tells you the story. And the thing that's so magical about it is that you can have a very different experience than I did based on which cassettes you found and which ones you chose to listen to. But my wife and I, Lisa and I, we left the Nest and we played at like midnight. we left the nest, we went to our Airbnb, and we just couldn't even talk. We were so overwhelmed by what we were feeling. We couldn't talk about it until the next day because it was so in our heads. And that's a thing that I've not seen very much of. And I think that's why it resonates with people, is that it shows that there is something more to escape rooms than just puzzles, solving them and feeling good because you solve them. It's possible to make people feel really powerful emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the story resonates with you in so many different ways. It's life experiences that we all have. It's keying into moments in our childhood. The cassette player was so tactile, which was great. A novel way of delivering information, but we all had those things, and we all had viewfinders, and we all took photos of people, and that room did such a beautiful job of creating an atmosphere of memory. And the set design is so important. And it's this, you're in like a memory scape almost that you're walking through and experiencing somebody else's life. And you're doing it through your own and projecting like your own experiences into that. So it's just so beautifully done. If you get a chance to do it in Los Angeles, which is where I've done most of my rooms. So.
Do you have a favorite emotion that you like to push on that button when you're performing?
Yeah, well, it's teaching people something new, right? That they can remember, and I love the esoterica of here's this person and when they were born and this cool, crazy thing that they did. And you probably didn't know about this person, but now you do. And so that's kind of my mother's a history professor. I was a history major in college. I love that vaudevillian esoterica. And I'm writing a show right now. I'm going to launch a virtual puzzle show, and it's going to be all like, here's who Sam Lloyd was, the great puzzle maker from the turn of the last century. Here's who Martin Gardner was, mathematics and puzzles. So I love keying into that stuff.
Sign me up. I'll be watching that.
Yeah. Here, I'll say this for you guys. Puzzles to do. Check out the Enigmatist trailer. The hidden message in that leads to three really fun puzzles on a secret website. These cards, when they come out, are enigmas, also themed on my show. You figure out that there are 4 puzzles in that deck of cards. You'll probably be able to pick them up somewhere. That will unlock an online puzzle hunt that is written by Dave Shukan. I've mentioned his name already. This guy, if you want a puzzle palooza, go to davespage.com. Dave Shukan, Shukan. One of the best puzzle makers you will find anywhere. And I love collaborating with him. So lots of puzzles to do. And I'm easily reachable on Twitter and Instagram if you want other puzzle recommendations. I should have a New York Times Sunday crossword coming out pretty soon. So please reach out. I'd love to meet you guys.
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
So glad that we were able to get you here. And hopefully we'll be able to interact in real life one day again, and people will be able to get out and see the Enigmatist, because it is well worth seeing.
Thank you so much. My virtual show will be available for all of you just after Labor Day. So it'll be puzzles, call and response puzzles with the audience. I'll hold up things. Raise your hand if you know the answer, with a secret hidden message going on the whole time. So it's exactly the kind of stuff that you guys will love. So please check that out.
All right. We'll be there.
All right. Thanks.
Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Lisa. And we're from RoomEscapeArtist.com, the hosts of Recon, the Reality Escape Convention.
This was one of 15 talks that we put on at Recon Global this year, a digital convention for the escape room and immersive gaming industries, for players and for owners and everyone in between. They gathered on August 23rd and 24th of 2020.
We're releasing all 15 of these talks about once a week over the coming months so that they'll be accessible to you. To find them, you subscribe here to the Room Escape Artist YouTube channel. And if you're interested in more information about Recon, go to realityescapecon.com and subscribe to the newsletter.
We put on Recon completely for free because we didn't want there to be financial barriers. We are, however, supported by our Patreons, and so we're thankful to those who are already supporting us. And if you have the ability to support us right now, and you want to, and you like what we're doing, we would really appreciate it. People who back us get early access to these videos along with a whole bunch of other perks.
That is the Room Escape Artist Patreon page. And if you're enjoying these videos and this industry, please support the creators in the space. Play their games in person or virtually. They're doing so many innovative things right now, and we hope that you'll enjoy those.
Thank you very much. We'll see you on the next video.